One of the ways that this classificatory system can be applied is towards behavior change. Often when we think about meditation, we think of it in terms of achieving certain pleasant subjective states or certain wisdom insights. And definitely that is a side of the meditative endeavor. But I think that it is extremely important that behavior change, objective behavior change, be included in the stated goals of the meditative path. So what do I mean tangibly by objective behavior change? Well, I mean things like one's habit around food or substances, if one is using tobacco or other drugs or alcohol, and one wishes to reduce that or eliminate that, that would be a behavior change. Eating the right amounts of the right things, etc., that would be a behavior change. One of my biggest issues behaviorally is a tendency to procrastinate and to avoid responsibilities. So being more responsible, that's a behavior change. It turns out that there's a basic principle for applying meditation to behavior change. And that principle is external behaviors are controlled by sensory events. For example, let's say that you would like to stop smoking. You decide, I'm going to stop smoking. Now what happens? Well, you have the urge to smoke. But what's the urge to smoke? Well, sensorially, you are having withdrawal from nicotine that creates uncomfortable touch. You feel nervous, frightened, irritated. That's uncomfortable feel. You have images, mental pictures of smoking. And when you have that mental picture of smoking, again, you get a pleasant feel. A smile comes on your face. You have talk about how uncomfortable you are, but you also have talk about, well, maybe I should start again. I really deserve it, blah, 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 okay? So some combination of touch, feel, image, talk, either pleasant or unpleasant, is creating the carrot and the stick sensory events that are your urge to smoke again. The carrot part is smoke again and you'll have these pleasant feel, and your talk is telling you that, and the image is reinforcing it. The stick part is if you keep abstaining, you're going to have these unpleasant touches and these unpleasant feels. So the urge is coming up tangibly in terms of 4 sensory events. If you can untangle those, meaning keep track of them, then they won't crisscross and multiply into a force that you cannot resist. In other words, if there's 10 units of force in touch, likewise feel, image, talk, that is driving you to smoke again, by what mathematical formula do we compute the aggregate force on that that is in that urge? Well, I would claim that if you can keep these elements distinct in awareness as they are arising in real time, moment by moment, that you'll have exactly what's there, 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. So that's 4 times 10 or 40. If you cannot do that, they will crisscross, cross-multiply, creating the impression of 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, or a force of 10,000 that you cannot resist. Applying mindfulness to these will reduce the power of the urge and make it easier for you to not give in to that urge. Also, if you have equanimity, if you open to these things, you'll discover that actually what you thought was 10 is actually just 2. Most of the power in these things is in the resistance to the things. That's being multiplied, say, by 5, okay, in each case. So really, once you have equanimity, so you reduce your grasping around the sensory event to 1/5 of what it was before, now you've just got 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. So that's like 8. And the urge is, you can stay with it until it passes. And you can do that over and over again until the urge doesn't come up again. So that's the basic meditative principle behind behavior change as applied to a specific of resisting the urge to reuse tobacco. But you can substitute any behavior that you're trying to get over, and the principle will be the same. It will either just involve the subjective system of feel, image, talk, or it will involve in some way touch plus feel, image, talk. In other words, body plus mind. Now, there's another basic principle in applying meditation in general and mindfulness in specific to behavior change. What I just described, the first basic principle, which is to deconstruct the urge meditatively, if you attempt to apply that principle, it will either work or it won't, meaning that you'll either achieve the behavior change you want or you'll fail to achieve it. It is not guaranteed that the mindfulness alone will achieve the behavior change. So if you attempt to apply the first principle, which is see that the object of behavior is being controlled by sensory events, and then you deconstruct those sensory events with concentration, clarity, equanimity skills. That's the first principle. If you attempt to apply that first principle and it works, great, you've done your job. It is possible that it might not work. It's insufficient. So the second principle says if that doesn't work, then you have to go for an external accountability structure of some sort. That means you have to go to a counselor, a therapist, a 12-step program, a sponsor, a friend, a something that's on the outside that is giving you manageable assignments in changing your behavior. So you combine that external accountability structure with the continuing of your meditative approach. And that, with time, should get the job done. For example, in my own case, one of my habits, which was a pretty deep one, 10-year marijuana abuse situation, literally evaporated without the tiniest without the tiniest struggle, literally overnight as the result of applying a mindfulness technique. On the other hand, another major behavioral struggle that I've had in my life, which is with procrastination and avoiding responsibility, well, I ended up having to have 18 months of psychotherapy with a psychiatrist, a real doctor, an MD. And by the way, this wasn't all that long ago, maybe, I don't know, 6 years ago or so. So I needed to create for myself that accountability structure because the meditation alone wasn't doing it. However, the combined effect of the psychotherapy and my meditation practice was very strong, stronger than they would be individually. So they potentiated each other. And I've been having a lot more success with that than I ever thought possible.